Justin, you were talking about a major factor for AV industry growth was IT-ification. What did you mean by that?
For me, IT-ification, well, obviously it means making our industry more like IT. But taking that specifically, IT is really driven these days by user experience and by software. That's where the purchasing decisions are made, right? It comes down to what's your compute platform. Are you a Windows house or are you a Mac house? Or do you use Linux for your platform? You tend to make the software decision first in IT and then buy and build hardware around it to support that. In the mobile space, the mobile phone space, we see the same thing. If I ask you what kind of phone do you want, your first decision is, do you want an iPhone or an Android? It's not, do I want 700 megahertz GSM or 1950 megahertz TDMA? And so we really are driving AV to a place where user experience starts the conversation, software then follows to support building that user experience, and hardware becomes the necessary piece that we fill in to support that hardware and software. So at SDVoE, we're driving interoperability between that hardware in order to help create this transition. So SDVoE has a standardized API software layer that means that all of the hardware devices respond in the same way to a standard set of software commands. That means hardware and software are decoupled. And now we can have a member like ViewWall, who is a software manufacturer. They don't build any hardware, that can build an experience, again, a software package that can now be delivered on any SDVoE member's hardware, just like you might buy a Windows license and use it on a Dell or an HP.
Does the AV industry necessarily want interoperability?
I think interoperability is let's say, most beneficial, especially to the large enterprise customer, right? To somebody who needs to feel secure in their vendor relationships, to the degree that, frankly, if they had to, they could switch vendor relationships, and that's a scary thing for manufacturers, right? But what we have to realize is that we don't succeed by locking people into our solution. We succeed by offering good products at the right prices and with good support. And if you offer that to your customers, they're not going to switch away from you, regardless of whether somebody else's product is compatible with yours or not. Another interesting point that's been brought to me by some large enterprise customers is the value that interop brings to international sourcing. We've had examples of somebody says, well, I've standardized on brand A for my systems, but it turns out it's really hard to get brand A in Thailand and Vietnam, but brand B works, is easy to get in those countries, just as a silly example. And so having an interoperable story means that now they could sort of select from the whole breadth of in this case, the SDVoE catalog, to get products that can work in any location they need to access them.
How is the IT industry taken to what you're doing at the SDVoE?
The IT guys that have been exposed to SDVoE love the solution, right? Because we're speaking their language, right? We're no longer living in a world. The AV world today, if I can draw an analogy from how we operate, in matrix switch world, even in AV over IP to the IT world, it's like we're saying, oh, your HP computer can't send an email to your Dell computer. Everybody knows that, right? But that's how we live in AV, right? If you have a Crestron matrix switch and you want to expand it, you have two choices. You can buy more Crestron gear and expand it, or you can throw the whole thing in the garbage and buy an Extron matrix switch. IT does not work like that. If you have a Cisco infrastructure, but you decide that you want something different, you can expand that with Extreme or Juniper or Netgear equipment because it interoperates. And so the IT guys are so accustomed to that world that they find our approach in AV to be almost ridiculous. And SDVoE is a welcome change to them to say, wow, look, an AV platform that understands how the world works.
How is the cloud going to be affecting all this?
I think the cloud, it just opens up more interesting applications for AV, and because of the nature of AV over IP and SDVoE in particular, all of our devices are natively network-based devices. So it means it's very easy to build cloud-based solutions that can reach in, that can monitor, that can enable things like AV as a service that just aren't as possible with less intelligent links like you have in a matrix switch.
Where do you feature with standards, and are they required?
I think we could say we are a standard in AV. AV certainly lacks for standards in the sense of technical bodies that get together, deliberate carefully for years, write down an approach to something, and then hope people adopt it. This is SMPTE, this is VESA, this is IEEE even. AV has been more of a moving target, I think, that makes it really challenging to operate in that way, because you're always sort of behind the curve. We keep moving the ball, and it's hard for a standards body that's deliberative, that's collaborative, to even keep up. That's why we see SMPTE trying to get into Pro AV with their 2110 protocols. Those protocols are still unfinished, they're still not ratified, they're still incomplete, and they're building on other technologies. Okay, well, we have 2110 for transport, but now we need AMWA for control and device discovery. It's a real challenge to operate that way in Pro AV space. So SDVoE, I don't mind saying, has even seen Dante from Autonate as something of a model for us. The idea is to sort of run fast with a really good solution, drive adoption, and then in fact you are a standard. What is a standard if not something everyone uses? So for us, that's how SDVoE is a standard. Today we have 45 manufacturers delivering 200 products to the market that are all operating on this standard platform.
Are we working towards standards like we have in IT, for example?
No, and frankly, this is another advantage to the de facto standard approach, right? Part of the standardization is really driven by the fact that everyone is using the same chipset and the same API to build their hardware and software. And so there is no differentiation in either of those two places. There's no room for it. If this were a SMPTE standard, then everyone would read it, everyone would make their own interpretations, and then we'd try to get them to fit together. Here it's much more regimented, right? This is the chip, this is what it does, and the API sort of reaches through the manufacturer's hardware to that. And what they're left with is the ability to differentiate on the kind of hardware products that they build and on the software that creates a particular user experience. So we have folks now differentiating. They build a device that can be an encoder or a decoder. We've just had someone develop the very first PCI capture card for SDVoE. Christie has started integrating the technology into their 3DLP displays and into their microtiles LED product. ZV has built an HDMI input card for a Netgear modular Ethernet switch. So these are the kinds of ways that the hardware is still differentiated, but it's still the same core technology operating the same way on all of them.
I mean, with AV environments being fairly proprietary, are they in a position really to be able to be interoperable?
I think the biggest challenge there is a transition that would be necessary from, don't let me get too deep now, but from application-specific circuitry, the chips, the hardware that we rely on today, into sort of general purpose compute, right? Software that just runs on an x86, on an Intel platform or something like that. That's a big challenge fundamentally because application-specific circuits work a lot faster and more efficiently than computers. So today we can obviously build a distribution system that supports 4K and HDR and all those formats. Soon we'll have 8K capabilities in that. What will happen is general purpose compute will be able to run those same kinds of algorithms and do the kind of transport you're talking about, straight from a PC that's network connected across the network into a display that can decode it, but maybe not for 4K today and 8K tomorrow, maybe for 2K today. So there will always be a lag in terms of what general compute can do compared to what an application-specific circuit can do. And that really means a piece of hardware outside the computer that you plug into. So that means there's always going to be a market advantage to having the bigger, better, faster, more product that will be an external box. So will we eventually get to a place where everyone says what compute can do is good enough and I don't need an external box? Maybe. But we've been as humans, we've been building digital technology for a long time, and we don't seem any closer to the point where we say, okay, this is good enough, we're done.
What's the next end user challenge for you?
End user challenge, that's an interesting question because to me, I think end users are some of the folks who benefit the most from SDVoE. One of the challenges we get from them is around the idea of network integration, of bringing the AV network and the IT network together. That's something that's now fully possible with SDVoE. It's something that we see being deployed. And we also see folks choosing not to deploy that way, choosing to deploy SDVoE as a network separate from the IT data network. But there are challenges there based around sort of fear of the unknown, right? Because it gets back to that knowledge gap of AV guys have a certain set of knowledge, a certain set of skills around experience, around video quality, processing, managing audio, and IT guys have a certain set of knowledge and skills around network security and management. And they get a little paranoid of one another, right? Well, I own this network and I don't know if I want that AV traffic on here because I don't know if I trust you to be on my network as a good citizen. And conversely, the AV guys can sometimes feel pushed around by the IT guys. You know, if they think, well, I want to use this low-cost Netgear switch, but the IT guy says, no, this is a Cisco-only house. So the end user challenge is often around that idea of integrating the two networks and some of the challenges that can present. So again, what we do with SDVoE Alliance is to try and educate, to fill that knowledge gap, to make it easier for AV and IT groups to communicate with one another and help enable that convergence.